Reddit user posted a photo of a man at a gas station. Grainy image. Timestamp visible in the corner. By that evening, the thread had narrowed it down to a name. 72 hours later, DNA results from the lab confirmed it. The lab hadn't even finished running the sample, but the internet already knew. This is what happened in the cases where that became the pattern, and what it means that it keeps happening.
The toolkit. The people in that Reddit thread weren't guessing.
They had a method. And once the actual toolkit these communities are working with is understood, the speed of what they pulled off stops feeling like luck and starts feeling like something else entirely. The core of it is forensic genealogy. Specifically, platforms like GEDmatch, a public database where anyone can upload raw DNA data from a consumer ancestry kit. Investigators and volunteers cross-reference a suspect's DNA with public profiles uploaded to GEDmatch, building out family trees branch by branch until they land on a living relative close enough to matter. That process sounds methodical and slow. It is not. Not anymore. Layer on top of that what the open source intelligence community brings to the table. Reverse image search to trace a photo back through a dozen reposts to its origin. Geolocation from background details. A specific road sign, a utility pole configuration, a mountain ridge visible through a window. Cross-referencing public records, voter rolls, property deeds, archived social media profiles. These are not hacks. They are legal. They are free. And the people using them have become frighteningly effective. Parabon Nanolabs, one of the professional labs working in this space, has assisted law enforcement in making positive identifications at a rate of more than 1 per week on cases that have been cold for over 25 years on average. That is the paid, credentialed version. The volunteer networks operating in parallel on Discord servers and Reddit threads and niche true crime forums are running the same logic chain with publicly available tools and no budget at all. In one recent case, a blood sample was sent to a lab for DNA extraction and whole genome sequencing. The data was forwarded to Parabon for a genotype profile, and volunteers began working it through genealogy databases simultaneously. The community had identified a candidate before the official confirmation arrived months later. That gap between when the internet knows and when the lab confirms is exactly what the following cases are about. Case 1. The Brown University shooting. The clearest version of that pattern played out in December of 2025 in Providence, Rhode Island, when a Reddit user cracked a murder case that surveillance cameras and an entire law enforcement apparatus had been circling for days without closing. On December 13th, 2025, a gunman opened fire at Brown University, killing 2 students and wounding 9 others. The suspect, a 48-year-old former Brown graduate student and Portuguese national named Claudio Neves Valente, was already gone by the time police secured the scene. What followed was a multi-agency manhunt with access to doorbell cameras, license plate readers, and a sprawling network of vehicle tracking technology. And still, the critical connection, the one that actually linked a specific car to Neves Valente, did not come from any of that. It came from a local Reddit user who, in the words of Rhode Island's own Attorney General, blew this case right open with a tip posted directly to the platform.
The thread did what the cameras could not.
What is striking about that is the speed. This was not a cold case. The shooting had happened days earlier. The forum was not working from archived evidence or a decades-old DNA profile. It was running in real time, alongside an active investigation, and it got there first. Sweeping surveillance technology eventually helped track Neves Valente's whereabouts, but the connective tissue, the car link, came from the Reddit post.
That is the pattern.
Not that the internet is smarter than law enforcement, but that it moves differently. It aggregates attention from thousands of people simultaneously, each one scanning a different corner of the same problem, and sometimes one of them sees the thread that everyone else missed. The Rhode Island Attorney General standing at a podium and crediting a Reddit comment as a case-breaking tip is not a fluke. It is the pattern, documented, and on the record. That Reddit tip in the Brown University case. Do you think internet communities should be actively working alongside live investigations? Or does that cross a line? Drop your answer in the comments. Because the next case is where that line gets a lot harder to see. Case 2, the Delphi murders. That clean, one-tip resolution in Providence had a single thread to pull, and someone pulled it cleanly. The Delphi case had thousands of threads, and thousands of people pulling all of them at once, including the wrong ones.
Abby Williams, 13.
And Libby German, 14, were found dead in a wooded area near a hiking trail in Delphi, Indiana in 2017. The day after they were last seen on an abandoned railroad bridge called the Monon High Bridge. The case went cold almost immediately. No arrest, no named suspect, just a grainy video clip, a voice recording, and a sketch. The brutal nature of the crime, combined with the total absence of answers, attracted obsessive interest from all over the world, forming communities on Reddit and Facebook that never stopped working the case.
Those communities were doing exactly what the previous section described: cross-referencing public records, building timelines, constructing suspect profiles. They produced detailed analyses of audio and video footage, maps of key locations, compilations of witness testimonies. Meticulous, thorough, and in multiple documented instances, pointed at the wrong people entirely. Innocent men had their names, addresses, and workplaces posted publicly in threads that spread across platforms. The damage to those people's lives did not wait for confirmation. It landed the moment the post went up. Investigators, officials, prosecutors, and defense attorneys all found themselves in an unprecedented situation, with internet communities actively warping the conditions of a live investigation through leaked theories and publicly named suspects who had no connection to the crime. Richard Allen, a drugstore worker from Delphi,
was ultimately arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder in October 2022. He was convicted and received a 130-year prison sentence.
The internet's eventual conclusion turned out to be correct, but the path there had left wreckage. Real people who had nothing to do with those girls' deaths had been publicly named, harassed, and in some cases, forced to flee their communities, while the forums moved on to the next theory.
They got the right person.
Look at what happened along the way. Case free. Bone Lake, Jane Doe. That question of whether any of this is actually acceptable becomes most complicated in the case that took 33 years to resolve, and was finally cracked not by law enforcement, but by a volunteer nonprofit operating with no badge, no subpoena power, and no budget. In June of 1993, a severed head was found on the banks of Bone Lake in Scandia, Minnesota. A foot turned up a day later near Pig's Eye Lake in St. Paul. No name. No match in any missing persons database. She went into a file as Bone Lake Jane Doe, and she stayed there for 33 years. As recently as June 2025, the detective work in the case was still publicly hoping that evolving technology might produce something. That is not a breakthrough. That is a prayer. On June 11th, 2026, the Washington County Sheriff's Office identified her as Denise Elaine Sexton Hartley. The DNA Doe Project, a volunteer nonprofit, cracked it through genetic genealogy, tracing connections that led investigators to Ohio, where they located Denise's family and obtained a DNA sample that the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension confirmed. A volunteer organization operating with no legal authority built a family tree from a fragment of DNA recovered from a severed head found in 1993 and walked it all the way forward to a living daughter in Ohio. 33 years. No warrant required at any stage of the genealogy work. No court order to access the databases. The confirmation at the end, the official lab result, was almost a formality. The family finally got answers. The woman in that file had a name, and none of it required a warrant, a badge, or a court order to get there. The question that doesn't have an answer. The justice system built its safeguards, warrants, chain of custody, rules of evidence, the presumption of innocence, specifically to slow things down, to create friction between accusation and consequence. Those safeguards exist because the alternative, as the Delphi forums demonstrated in real time, is innocent people having their names posted across the internet while the crowd moves on to the next theory without issuing a correction. The toolkit that gave Denise Hartley her name back after 33 years is the same toolkit that destroyed those men's lives in Indiana. There is no version of the tool that does one without being capable of the other. Go back to that thread from April 2019. The grainy gas station photo. The name the forum landed on by evening. The DNA result that confirmed it 3 weeks later. The thread was right.
The community identified the correct person, and the lab confirmed it. And it is still not clear that they got it right this time is a sufficient argument for removing the safeguards that exist for the times they do not. The internet solved it. The internet also has no mechanism for what happens when it is wrong. That tension between a system too slow to deliver justice and a crowd too fast to guarantee it is not going away. As genealogy databases grow and these tools become sharper, it is only going to deepen. Subscribe. The next case goes deeper.